Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Friday, May the 2nd, which makes this the news for Thursday, May the 1st, day 1163 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you from this major European capital currently under siege. Hey, Fitz, how you doing, pal? So Mike Walls is out, but Fitz says, yeah, but he's just got a new job at the UN, right? But Fitzy, he's got to be reconfirmed by the Senate. Now, remember, this is the son of a bitch who caused Signalgate, right? By inviting the Atlantic editor into the Signal chat where they were sharing classified battle plans. Hysterical. I mean, it really is. It's such a confederacy of dunces. You have to laugh. You have to laugh at it, I think. So anyway, hey, PH. So I wonder, now, we won't know until it happens, right? But Mike Walls putting that reporter into the Signal chat really hurt his reputation and made us the laughing stock of the world, right? Exactly. Who controls the Senate? Hey, bro dog. It's clown college up there, right? It's a clown car packed in with fertilizer and fuel oil being driven over a cliff by a suicidal Donald Duck. That's the world we're living in. Now, could it be that, hey, Babadan, could it be that Trump wants Waltz out, but is going to let the Senate do his dirty work for him? Meanwhile, saddling Marco Rubio with both jobs, which should ensure his near-term failure. And then we'll be rid of Marco Rubio as well. Dear God, will the Senate get its act together and approve, as the axe keeps falling in the Trump administration, will the Senate ever get its act together and approve only qualified appointees? We shall see. We shall see. Hey, Di. Hey, Roy. Hey, Richard Prexis. Hey, Mandabear. How's everybody doing tonight? Never, says Brodog. You could be right, pal. Boy, I'll tell you, well, we'll talk about Lindsey Graham in a second. Listen, the first thing I want to talk about tonight, and I hope this person is here. Somebody said last night on the live that Ukraine just got 1.6 million artillery shells. And I thought that can't possibly be right. So I went looking today. So now dig it. So whoever said this was right. I want to start with that and thank them for putting me onto this story because I did not know about this. Ukraine, we do know, produces about 2.5 million artillery shells a year of their own right now. That's what the current production is here in the country. 2.5 million standard NATO 155 millimeter artillery shells. They also produce some of the Soviet standard 152 millimeter because they have a bunch of, Soviet howitzers too. So 2.5 million artillery shells being produced domestically. The Czech initiative has promised 1.5 million shells this year and delivered 400,000. So they're right on pace to deliver the 1.5 million that they've promised. What was unclear to me was that the EU commitment to provide shells to Ukraine is underway. So the Europeans promised Ukraine 2 million shells this year, which, given the rate at which weapons promises have been made, and weapons deliveries have been made, I don't know about you, but I didn't have a high degree of confidence that they would see the 2 million shells from the EU this year. It turns out that the EU has already delivered 1.6 million shells, 2/3 of what they've promised. So this isn't even the Czech initiative. That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different project. Another one. So what we're saying here is that the Europeans are ahead of schedule to deliver their 2 million. The Czechs are on track to deliver their 1.5 million. And the Europeans are ahead of schedule to deliver their 2 million. That's 6 million artillery shells this year. Right now, so it turns out, I didn't even know this, the Ukrainians have been shelling at a rate of about 2,000 shells per day. That rate has now increased to 3,000 shells per day. Now, can you imagine you're a Russian soldier and you've gone from 2 artillery shells going off in your vicinity to 3 going off in your vicinity? On top of that, the drones are in the air all the time. And while maybe only 3 came out in your vicinity, right, the number in your area is up 50%. My God, with 6 million artillery shells, right, at 150,000 shells a month, the Ukrainians, for the first time, have enough artillery shells. And I got to tell you, it seems to me, if the Europeans are really ahead of schedule, if they can get all 2 million shells here, wouldn't that be something? If the Ukrainians could double the daily rate of fire, just start pounding the front line all up and down it with twice the artilleries. So I don't know that that's going to happen, but it seems to me, with the condition of the Russian economy, with the condition of the Russians on the front lines, with the deficits in recruitment, any day now, the conditions are going to be right. And if Ukraine took that chance, if they've got a year's worth of ammunition on hand, why not try to fire off 3 months worth in 1 month and see if that doesn't change the calculus of the battlefield? Because I fucking think it would. I do. Could you imagine if they shot 450,000 shells next month, what that would do to the Russian front line? I mean, mind blown. Now, on the subject of my mind being blown, I slept great last night. I mean, guys, I'm so sorry that I wasn't here. I came home from English Club. It was about 11 o'clock. I ate a turkey sandwich. I sat down on the sofa. The next thing I knew, it was 3 a.m. I was waking up all disoriented and confused. You know how that is. So I apologize. So Chris Carter, who is the sponsor of the lives this week, Chris, you're going to be on Monday too. And then Mrs. Toad is our co-sponsor tonight if Mrs. Toad is around. Thank you, Mrs. Toad. Thank you, Chris Carter. And then it'll be Arn next week, Tuesday through Friday. Thank you, Uncle Christopher. I was fine. Now, dig it, though. I must have really been tired. And it's true, there have been a lot of sleepless nights lately. And I slept right through until 9 a.m. this morning. Except for getting up from the sofa at 3 a.m. and going to bed. I slept right through until 9 a.m. Despite the fact that there was an air raid here last night. Now, it was not a normal air raid. What do I mean by that? There were hits inside the city, but there was a delay in the explosions. It appears that last night what happened was the Russians hit us with drones that had cluster munitions. So inside of the drone, there's all these little bomblets, and these bomblets had timed fuses. So rather than just one big impact, hitting a building, causing a fire, all around a park just south of me here, all these tiny little bomblets fell. And these bomblets had timed triggers. So as the clock wound down, they started to explode. And so there were a series of explosions around the city of these small little bomblets. By the grace of God, only one person was injured. But they used cluster munitions with a delayed detonation on civilian targets right here in Kyiv. And this is being reported by the Kyiv Independent. I didn't see the story until after I did the news we were waking up to, which is why it wasn't in there this morning, for anybody that watches the news that we're waking up to that I do. In last night's missile and drone attacks, the Russian Federation sent, the Ukrainians shot 74 of them down. And then another 62, if I'm not mistaken, were taken out with active countermeasures and electronic warfare for a total interception rate of, here it is, 142 out of 170, 83.5% interception rate. So pretty good numbers last night. But again, I slept right through the alarms. I slept right through the explosions. I did not hear a thing. So I must have been exhausted I did feel tired last night. Anyway, last month in April alone, we saw really, it appears to me that what we saw was the Ukrainian Air Force extending the capabilities of its Air Force to include close air support for infantry operations, which is a cornerstone. Air superiority is a cornerstone of combined arms maneuvers. Now, according to the Ukrainian Air Force, in the month of April alone, and this is the first time I have ever seen them publish this statistic, the Ukrainian Air Force flew more than 200 close air support operations in support of ground forces on the front line. Over 200. To the best of my knowledge, this is a new thing. This is a new capability, and it demonstrates the evolution of the Ukrainian armed services under the worst conditions possible, that of full-scale invasion. Just impressive, right? Impressive. The other big news, I think, the big political story, even though it may likely be a nothing burger in so many ways, is the U.S. and Ukraine minerals deal. Now, you and I and everybody that watches this channel were appalled by the kind of corporate oligarchy, economic coercion of the first versions of the minerals deal. They were usury of the worst sort. And so I think all the friends of Ukraine were rightly concerned about any minerals deal with the U.S. And we shouldn't have been, because the Ukrainians know what they're doing. They're not going to sell out their future. They're not going to sell out their country. And in the end, it looks to me like they got a good deal. It's a pretty simple, straightforward deal. Ukraine gets to keep all of its subsurface rights. So all rare earths, all gas, all oil deposits, all belong to and are controlled by Ukraine. Obviously, right? Sovereign assets, as it should be. Ukraine is in control of where and when digging happens, what is going to be mined. So we got a lithium deposit over here, We want somebody to mine it. We're going to put it up for bid. And what the U.S. gets is preferential treatment. The U.S. companies, U.S. interests will have first dibs, basically, on these contracts. Best offer wins. So we got a lithium deposit. We're going to put up the licensing agreement for you to mine it. We get 18% of the take, whatever it is. U.S. company comes in, starts mining the lithium. Okay. What does Ukraine do with the funds from the licensing? Half of those funds have to go into the jointly administered Ukraine Reconstruction Fund. And so all of the money stays in Ukraine and goes to rebuilding Ukraine. That's good news for everybody, I think. And then again, there's the reality of the Afghanistan deal, right? We have the same fucking deal with Afghanistan. You think any American companies are going in there? Fuck no, they aren't. So it could well be that even though this deal is in place, nothing ever comes of it. No, not a single shovelful of earth gets moved for rare earths to be mined by the United States. However, what this does is send a very powerful message. It sends a powerful message to Europe and to the world, to Russia, that the United States is committed to a sovereign and independent Ukraine with a future of its own and future prosperity for itself. That's what it says to the world. And that there was one statement in particular that I was so happy to see was included in this deal. The very simple words, because of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, placing the blame clearly, for the first time from anybody in this administration, on the aggressor nation and holding them accountable. That's good news for everybody, that somebody in the Trump administration was able to put something that looks like the truth into a document that isn't built for neo-colonial exploitation. Thank God. None of this would have happened if the Ukrainians didn't stick to their guns. If when Trump ambushed Zelensky at the White House, he hadn't thrown up his hands in exasperation and walked away from that ignorant orange child and his coterie of buffoons. So everybody, like I said yesterday, right? Whatever happens with the minerals deal, we should trust the Ukrainians to make a deal that's good for them. And it looks like that's exactly what they did. Thanks, Dave. Ukraine does retain a surprising amount of control. I mean, given the really predatory nature of the first couple versions of the deal, this is, it appears to be, at least on the surface, a very reasonable deal. That's a win-win for everybody, especially if it gets the United States closer to Ukraine and makes it possible for them to start buying arms from us. Do you remember the way that Trump blew Zelensky off when he asked to buy 10 Patriot systems? That's $15 billion. He offered to buy $30 to $50 billion worth of American weapons. After months of Trump calling him a beggar, saying that he was looking for handouts, that U.S. had been taken advantage of, that Ukraine owed us all this money. Zelensky stands up and says, "Let me buy your weapons. I have $50 billion. Would you like $50 billion? And Trump blows it off. The big deal maker, the big businessman, can't dare take the money from Ukraine, or it'll upset his Kremlin handlers. Oh no, Trump is all class with a capital K, right? All class with a capital K. How do you think Putin has taken the news? So I don't know if you ever look at Russian media, Russian state media, especially what is it, RI Ravosti or whatever it is. You know who I mean, right? The Russian state-owned TV. Holy cow. Within 20 minutes of each other, right? They published a story that said basically the minerals deal was off, that Ukraine tried to change the terms at the last minute, and there was no deal. And 20 minutes later, there was an article about the deal in which, get this, the words reconstruction, as in reconstruction fund, were in quotes, right? Like as if they didn't need to, like, I don't know what it meant, but they had reconstruction in quotes. Their reconstruction fund. What do they have to reconstruct for? Just our full-scale invasion, our special military operation? It really is a challenge, boy, in cognitive dissonance. To minimize it, right, Bip? Right, like that's exactly what they're doing. Out of one side of their mouth, they're saying it's nothing, no one should pay attention to it, it doesn't matter. And then on the other side, they're saying this is a huge escalation of things, right? Like we can't have this. Russia is always both the aggressor and the victim at the same time. The whole country seems like it's a bunch of sadists who are just wrapped around white-hot coals of insecurity. It is perverse. You're talking about the guy from Burkina Faso, Jax, right? The head of the military junta in Burkina Faso would not be in charge of the country if his coup had not been funded by Putin. He's a Putin puppet, right? Him, the guy in Mali, the military junta in I want to say the Democratic People's Republic of Congo, but I don't think that's right. I think there's another Congo, and that's the one. I apologize. But at any rate, at this point, the Russians have subverted about half a dozen African governments, and they're working on another half dozen and installed their own military juntas. Now, that guy in particular, the Burkina Faso Generalissimo Ibrahim something, he's going to be in attendance at the May 9th Victory Day parade in Russia. To the best of my knowledge, he is the only dignitary from Africa, from any African nation, who will be in attendance at the Victory Day parade. Championess, hold that thought for a second. Hold that thought for 1 second. Now, on the subject of the minerals deal, right? Does it, even though it's fairly meaningless, does it mean that the U.S. will resume weapons deliveries to Ukraine, which Ukraine is what Ukraine really needs from the U.S.? We don't know. We don't have a good answer to that, but we did see some movement in that direction. The $50 million in arms sales to Ukraine. So after calling Zelensky a beggar and looking for handouts and a European freeloader, after then blowing off the offer to buy $30 to $50 billion in U.S. weapons, when God knows we need the money coming in now more than ever, how he's wrecking international trade, I feel so bad for all the small businesses out there. Everybody who's got a small business that's dependent on the Chinese supply chain. you're out of business. You're done. Anyway, the U.S. has approved the first weapon sale to Ukraine. It's only $50 million. It's mostly support contracts, extending support contracts on equipment that we've given them. But it's a weapons deal. It's $50 million. It's nothing. It's peanuts, right? We're not sending cruise missiles, that's for sure. But does it open the door now for the U.S. to say, hey, buddy, you looking for some Patriot missiles? You need some near and long-range air defense? Have I got something for you? Take a look at these PAC-3 babies. So will we now sell them some Patriots? Will we sell them the other things that they need? Even while we are sabotaging the Abrams delivery from the Australians. I cannot even imagine what that's about. It's not even that many Abrams. I don't think it's not 100. I'm not even sure it's 50. But still, they're good fucking tanks. The Ukrainians have some battalions that know how to use them, right? Let Australia doesn't need them anymore. Let Australia send them. Why are we even interfering? Exactly. Why? Is it 51, Michael? It's just more than 50. That sounds about right. The problem, Mel, about the Ukrainians buying European arms, which I'm sure they would be happy to do, especially if the EU was going to finance the purchase with the interest from frozen Russian assets, for example. That's not the point. I'm sure that the Ukrainians would be happy to buy that stuff. The thing is, we gave them so much shit. They need more of that shit, right? Like the missiles that we sent that fit the systems we sent, you need more of those missiles. So for everything that we sent, there's a whole supply chain issue because the Ukrainians have lots of that stuff. So we want to keep it resupplied. To further diversify the portfolio of weapons, to further expand the supply chain, I think poses logistical concerns for everybody. So they'd rather just get more of what they know and use rather than try to integrate additional technologies into the battlefield realities, which they've been doing a phenomenal job of with this pastiche, this patchwork quilt of leftover stocks from Britain, Germany, France, the U.S., Canada, Turkey, wherever, everybody sent. Let's not forget the Baltics and the Scandinavian countries, especially, who have given above and beyond as a percentage of GDP than anybody else out there. F-16s from the boneyard. According to the Kyiv Post, well, that's a good source, Michael. I didn't see that article. More Patriots. We need more Patriots, Einstein. You are absolutely correct. We're running short of those missiles. And UK is sending Martlets, yep. Now, what else we got here? Okay, now somebody mentioned this about King Donald and how you have to talk to King Donald. Well, you know who's good at that? Lindsey Graham. Now, look, I don't think much about Lindsey Graham. In fact, if I find myself thinking about Lindsey Graham, I immediately start thinking about other things. He is a key Senate ally of President Donald Trump. But he says that there's nothing wrong with being gay. Let's not attack the guy for being in the closet, right? Gay is not an insult for anybody here, I would hope. So, regardless of his sexual preferences, he says he's got 72 votes in the Senate. That's a supermajority to back a bill to impose what he called, quote unquote, bone crushing sanctions on Russia and a 500% tariff, secondary tariff, on other countries that buy Russian oil, gas, and uranium, getting around the sanctions. Now that's the kind of talk we need more of, right? Here's the problem. And this is all from Bloomberg, by the way. It was Bloomberg that reported these quotes I'm about to give you. Here's the problem. The problem is you're dealing with Donald Trump. So Lindsey Graham can't make this proposal with the usual language we would expect in the defense of democracy, a sovereign nation fighting for its freedom against the autocratic aggressor. No. He has to make this all about Trump. Listen to these quotes that were published in Bloomberg. The goal is to help the president. That's the goal. The goal is to help Donald Trump. Quote, Donald Trump, talked about being frustrated. Graham went on to say, I want a negotiated end to the war, honorably and just. I think Trump's the best person to achieve that goal, but these sanctions represent the Senate's view, and we see the primary bad guy being Russia. He actually used the words, the bad guy is Russia, because that's the kind of simplistic, childlike explanation you need to spoon feed to King Donald in his madness if you want him to go along with you. There's a veiled threat in this, I think. Or maybe it's just a subtle way of revealing a political reality. He's got 72 votes in the Senate, and we all say that Russia is the bad guy. Maybe, Mr. President, you should be saying that too. Very Southern, very passive-aggressive, right? And very fawning in its obseisance to the orange Cittadini. When quote from Lindsey Graham, when President Trump believes that we've reached an impasse, then watch for action. He's giving Trump the out to turn 180 on Graham's dime. Thanks, Hopat. So this is all being reported in Bloomberg. The quotes all were published by Bloomberg today. And I hate it. I hate everything about it. We're not doing anything for the right reason. We're doing it to pander to the tangerine Palpatine. And that is just insane to me. Insane. But if it gets it done, I'll take it. Lindsey Graham has thrown down the gauntlet here. He's got a supermajority in the Senate that says Russia's the bad guy, and we should put more sanctions on them. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Pass the ammunition. Yeah, no, I don't trust Lindsey Graham. He is a political creature of the worst sort. And just the fawning way that he pitched this bill. But the thing is, he pitched it exactly the way you have to pitch it if you're going to get it across the Resolute desk today. He's got 72 votes in the Senate. Can he get the votes in the House? That's the question. Now, I was hopeful that with Trump saying to Kim Jong-un, that he should end his partnership with Putin and stop supporting the war, I was hopeful that maybe we had seen an end to North Korean participation. In fact, Kim Jong-un even went so far as to do a George Bush on the deck of the battleship, saying, "We've liberated Kursk, mission accomplished," as if he would be recalling the troops back to North Korea. Instead, he's announced plans with Putin to build a road bridge from North Korea to Russia, with apparently the goal of supplying arms and ammunition and workers and soldiers to Russia via trucks and buses. So there's going to be a new bridge. I don't know that I would drive across it, but maybe you would drive across it, from North Korea to Russia. Now, we know that the North Koreans have supplied lots of armaments, millions of shells, artillery shells, and of course 15,500 soldiers to Kursk. We heard some interesting news, for me they were new anyway, statistics from South Korean intelligence today. Of the 15,500 troops sent to Kursk, South Korean intelligence suggested today that KIA is only about 600. However, WIA is at 4,700. That's 5,300 KIA, WIA. Missing in action was not reported, and POWs is 2. That's a full third of the force wounded bad enough to be taken off the battlefield or outright unalived. Huge losses, 30%, 33%. Now, we also learned from South Korean intelligence today that they estimate that Russia has imported as many as 30,000 North Korean laborers to work on farms and in factories inside of Russia to try to help address its manpower shortage. Russia's got a real manpower shortage. Now, it is important to point out that it is against UN resolutions and in violation of treaty agreements signed by the Russians and the rest of the world to import North Korean labor. These people are not laborers. They are slaves to the Un regime, or the Kim regime in North Korea. And North Korea charges for the use of its people. They don't get paid. It's slavery of the worst sort. All slavery is of the worst sort. I'm sorry I said that. But it is yet another example of where South Korea, or where North Korea fits into all of this, and that they are not listening to the Trump regime at all. Let me just see. Did I get all that? North Korea, yes. Got all that. All right, so I got one more story here. Well, two more. This guy, Sergei Sternenko. Anybody heard of this guy? Holy cow, he's got a colorful life, let me tell you. He's a controversial kind of activist here in Ukraine who, died. That's exactly the point. How can these things be happening today? They aren't being done by people who live in today. They are being done by people who want to drag us back to the 19th century. Like Trump with his tariffs. He's just throwing out 150 years of modern economic learning to revert to a 19th century idea of what money meant and what government means. It's ridiculous. It's madness. It's the madness of King Donald. Yes, it is. Okay, now back to Sergei Stenenko. This fucking guy, this is his third assassination attempt by the Russians, right? The Russians have tried to take this guy out 3 times. Why? Well, he's a lawyer and an activist, and he's one of the people that's credited with seeding Ukraine's drone industry early on, so that and pushing for its development, so that Ukraine, of course, now is the drone capital of the world. Hold that thought, Ron. I'll come back to you. I'll certainly be happy to come back to you. So this was his quote. So this chick tries to off him in the street today, or right outside his house, I guess. And Sternenko posts on his Telegram channel, "I was attacked, wounded, everything is okay. There is no threat to my life. Russians are fuckers." Third assassination attempt. I love it. I love the Ukrainians are the best. They are really, really great. Now, this guy here, Ron Lyle, he says to me, what does he say exactly? Let me see here. He says to me, where'd it go, Ron? I want to quote you here. I don't want to claim to be misrepresenting what you said. What did he do? Did he delete his own comment or something? Well, basically what he said, and I guess he's run away. I don't see him anymore. Anyway, so what he said was basically, Donald Trump thinks like a billionaire. You think like a laborer. No, I think like a person with a degree in economics from a well-known Eastern Jesuit university. That's how I fucking think. I've studied the 150 years of modern economic development, and I know what Donald Trump is doing. And it's just this simple. The damage he has done already means a global recession is on its way. I don't believe there's any stopping it at this point. Even a full reversal on the tariffs. At this point, the supply chain is so badly disrupted, and our allies are so pissed off that I think at the very least a U.S. recession is unavoidable, and in all likelihood, a global recession, if not a depression, is certainly highly likely. Highly likely. Oh no, Steve-O, there's at least 3 Putins walking around. At least 3. Yep, Kath, you're right. And the worst part, Mel, about this new Great Depression that's on its way is that it was completely avoidable. If idiots like that guy that was just here a minute ago saying his stupid things hadn't voted for Donald Trump, who has created this out of thin air, we would not be in this situation. New trade alliances are already forming, and they do not include the United States. Satellite images of the port of Los Angeles versus satellite images, say, of Singapore or some of the East Coast shipping capitals of China. Those ports are all just as busy as they always are. It's the port of Los Angeles that's quiet. Trump is totally manipulating everything he can. Is there any proof that the real Putin is alive, Peter? Bip, it's a great question. I hate to sound like a tinfoil hat guy, right? But the evidence, the analysis from the Japanese voice and facial recognition data people, it looks like we haven't seen the real Putin, in public, nor heard him speak since June of 2022. That's what it looks like. Now, maybe that's not true. Maybe that is him. Maybe he's been sick, right? That's why the facial recognition software doesn't recognize it as him. But you do a Google that Japanese voice and facial recognition. It's very convincing, especially when they do the voice analysis, which is so clearly distinct. Well, honestly, Uncle Christopher, we don't know if he's sick or how sick he is. However, the rumors of his suffering some kind of cancer started, I want to say, around 2016, when his Secret Service personnel began carrying, are you ready for this? The shit case. So wherever he goes, when he takes a bowel movement, they literally take it with them. They don't flush on location. Now, the thinking was that they were doing that because a fecal analysis can give you all kinds of information about the state of the body, right? And whether or not it has cancer. For all we know, it's cancer and Parkinson's. We've seen just recently, there was a Putin whose leg was shaking under the table during the interview. So he's on TV and they kept the camera up close to him, but every once in a while you'd get a second camera shot from the side. And boy, his leg was going like a Parkinson's patient. Now, who's to say that one of the doubles doesn't have Parkinson's? Or one of the doubles doesn't have cancer? And that it's not even the real Putin with the disease? We don't know. We don't know. And at this juncture, I trust the information that comes out of the Kremlin so little that, to be honest, I can't say I believe that Putin is alive. I can't. There's a big part of me that really believes that there is some kind of cabal inside the Kremlin that is just trying to figure out a way to pilot this war to its conclusion that a dead Putin has already left them with. That's sheer fantasy on my part. But it does feel that way sometimes. Dark Irish, that would be another reason to collect the bowel samples, right? The fecal samples. Because they could show they have DNA in them. And a lot of DNA a lot of diseases and cancers can affect your DNA, change markers on them. And so if you run the DNA analysis and it shows these markers for these cancers, then you know the guy's got them too. So all of that. I don't think anybody wants to clone their own Putin. So I don't think anybody was collecting his shit to try to clone him. But if you were going to clone him, that would be the piece to do it from, since that really is the most representative of what he fundamentally is. Thanks, Pip. Correct, Mel. There's at least 3 doubles that we know about him. I call him Round Face, Weasel, and Puffy. And they're three different guys. It's just that simple. Putin himself has a kind of weasel face, right? It's pinched. But there's one guy who does look like Putin, except he's got a round face and these cherub cheeks when he smiles. And this guy actually smiles. unlike Putin. Then there's Puffy Guy, who looks like they shoot him up with Botox to make him look like Putin or something. And Puffy Guy wears his watch on his left hand. And I know this because I've seen him look at his empty wrist. This is important because Putin wears his on his right hand. And you don't fucking forget which hand you wear your watch on. So Puffy Guy wears his watch on his left hand and has shown it to us on more than one occasion. And then Pinch Face, he's the guy they sent to Dagestan. Remember, for like 4 years, we were watching Putin take meetings where the other guy was 6 meters away. Like nobody got within 18 feet of Vladimir Putin for about 2 years. Some people have speculated that that was because they didn't want people who knew the real Putin to be able to identify his imposters. We know that Erdogan, president of Turkey, left a so-called meeting with Putin at the Sochi Palace. This was back before the Kremlin tore down that palace rather than let the Ukrainians hit it with drones. The last time Erdogan met with Putin, he was so pissed off when he left. And he didn't have a good reason for being pissed off. But it reminded me of the South African representative to the Kremlin's annual African summit. The South African representative went to meet with Putin, and about 15 minutes into the conversation realized he was talking to a double, and he was pissed, and he walked out of the meeting. And his response, the South African representative's response to having been misled into a meeting with a duplicate, reminded me very much of the anger that Erdogan had. Erdogan's known Putin for decades. He would know if he was talking to a double. And I think they tried to pass a double off on Erdogan at that Sochi meeting because he was so mad when he left. And he had no good reason to be mad. That I could tell, nothing that was disclosed publicly. All that happened was they failed to come to an accommodation on a new grain deal. To the best of my knowledge, to the best of any public knowledge about that meeting. So, I don't have an answer. Whom did Tucker Carlson interview? That's a great question. One of the doubles. I mean, I know it's crazy, but I don't think that it's impossible that some kind of cabal of Kremlin power brokers have just been revolving these doubles around the place in order to keep power and the people in line. Because I think, honestly, no matter what happens, when Putin is gone, Russia collapses. His iron will is the only thing holding it together. Fear of him is the only thing holding it together. So I don't think it's impossible that some power brokers in the Kremlin have decided that when he died, we're just going to rotate these guys through the motions. Weekend at Vladdy's. There has been no word on Bashir al-Assad. I don't know that anybody has even seen him. Oh, look, I have no knowledge. Do tell, Jim, what did I get wrong? Oh, the voice analysis. The Japanese researchers did the voice analysis, Mel. They're 3 different people. It's very clear from the voice prints. Very, very clear. You know, Little Red, that does seem to be what the plan is, right? They're going to keep him alive forever. He's going to be like the emperor and keep him alive forever. He's going to be like the emperor in Foundation. Putin dawn, Putin afternoon, Putin dusk. I, Mel, I don't even know if the OG is still around. I really don't. It seems quite likely to me that he is not. That the Russians are making all these sacrifices for a dictator who not only does not care about them or did not care about them when he was alive, but in all likelihood is already gone. I mean, what a tragedy, right? You go to war for your dear leader, and it turns out he's just some body double that the people who are really in charge have been prancing around like a puppet. I don't think it's impossible that millions of Russians are going to discover that that has been the case for the last 2 years. While the oligarchs, the people who own, the 400 people that own 99.98% of Russian wealth, and that really is the number. 400 people own 99.98% of all the wealth in Russia. They're all going to have gold card citizenship to the U.S. at $5 million apiece. What a delight. And a whole new country. 300 million suckers to grift and to grind, to squeeze, because that's all they're capable of doing. Yeah, Yuri, that's a great question. Who's got control of the nukes? It's a great question, pal. The Senate passed a bill for deporting Americans? Oh my God. How do you mean to prison? You mean to El Salvador? Right? Because there's nowhere to deport Americans to. They're Americans. Unbelievable. This guy who said that I have no knowledge has not told me what I got wrong yet. Was it Jim McShane that said that? Yeah, Jim McShane, come on. I'm waiting, pal. Tell me, what is it that I don't know, please? Enthrall us all with your acumen. So no, you know what, I keep saying I'm going to look things up, and honestly, just keeping up is so hard. Oh, I saw that, Little Red, please. It's the worst. It's the worst. Okay. We got 1 minute left. So real quick, I want to thank Chris Carter, who is the sponsor of this live, along with Mrs. Toad. Thank you, Mrs. Toad. Thank you, Chris Carter. And I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces. I want to thank Lars, who has the Discord server, Jay and Travis. The moderators, thank you all so much. And guys, if you're not on the Patreon, you can get a free account and get in your inbox every morning the news we are waking up to, which is the news segment I do in the mornings. And if you have $5 or $10 a month, you can kick me. I would love it if you join the Patreon. I just lost some Patreon subscribers because they found out I was an atheist and that I didn't believe that God and praying would solve the Ukraine crisis. That in fact I said God is nothing but an excuse for good people to stand by and let evil happen. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Get up off your ass and do something. So they didn't like the fact that I'm an atheist and that I didn't think that God was going to fix Ukraine. And so they dropped me from the Patreon. So if there's any atheists out there, or just people who believe that God helps them who help themselves, and that instead of praying for God to fix Ukraine, we should all get up off our asses and do something about it, join the Patreon. Help me keep doing something about it. That would be great. Or sponsor a live. We got Chris Carter through Monday, then Tuesday through Friday. Next week is our buddy Arn. And if you can't afford a full sponsorship, maybe send a little something, and we'll make you a co-sponsor, a secondary sponsor over the next week. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Take care.